Hey, welcome to another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake.
And you know who we've got for a four-peat, which ties Alex DeCampi and Jim Zub as the person who's been on the most?
Kelsey Grammer.
I would love to get
We haven't
Graham.
even gotten him as a one-peat.
What?
Well, now no one's going to listen. But because this is the Frasier podcast where everybody talks salad and scrambled eggs. No, it's Rich Tommaso, man.
Yay!
He's here to talk about, well, we talk about a bunch of stuff, but he's really here to talk about Dry County, his new Image comic series, which is out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, March 14th. We also talk about his other Image Comics book, which is the remaster of Clover Honey, his first long-form comic work. That comes out in its new deluxe edition in April. But, let's let Rich talk about it. And coming back for his four-peat appearance, which ties him with Jim Zub and Alex DeCampi as our MVP. One way from winning the prize, which there's a legitimate prize. But that aside, Rich Tommaso is here to talk about his new Image comic series, Dry County, out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, March 14th. Also, we'll talk a bit about his remastered Clover Honey, which collects the entire... was Clover Honey your first long-form story, Rich?
Yes, so the very first thing I did was a comic called Cannibal Porn for Eros Comics. And then while I was working on that, Gary Groth of Fantagraphics told me, okay, when you're done with that, we're going to publish you officially for Fantagraphics. So Clover Honey was the first, which was supposed to be in a line of new straight-to-graphic novel format books.
Yeah. Which I guess is about 20 years old now, and that comes out on Wednesday, April 11th, same date as issue 2 of Dry County. But let's just go ahead and Rich. First off, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back.
So between both Clover Honey and Dry County, I think it's safe to say that Dark Passage as well. I think it's safe to say, or Dark Corridor. I always want to say Dark Passage.
Dark Passage.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of Dark Passage and a lot of noir, influence, a lot of love of crime fiction. What is it about crime and more specifically noir that has always kind of intrigued you both as a fan and a storyteller?
I think it's the most believable kind of fantasy you can go into. I do like doing stuff with, I like playing around with horror and I like to do science fiction sometime, but I think crime is probably the most relatable thing, especially when you're talking about noir, which is, a depressing situation. It's someone in a fix. So if you've ever had relationship troubles or money troubles or just any kind of thing like that, it's easy to kind of exaggerate that into a crime scenario. So I think that's always appealed to me in that way. And the books that I've read over the years kind of appeal to me in that same way.
There's kind of there is a I feel like it's not proper noir if there's a happy ending. Nobody can come out with a smile in a noir, flick, be it, A Kiss Before Dying or really.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think people confuse noir a lot. You'll see X-Men noir coming, and I'm like, what does that mean? People just think it means crime, and the actual definition of it is that it was something that was kind of started in the 1940 in film. And it meant depressing subject matter. It was characters who were doomed at the end of that of the film, and it was a story where they start out in a troubling kind of situation. That's really what noir is supposed to be about. So.
Is that kind of, with Clover Honey, you straight up rebuilt, from the ground up, about 20 pages worth of content. You tighten the script in some areas, but you still leave this new edition black and white. Was that still kind of a nod to that Hitchcock influence, that kind of Notorious Suspicion era 1940s Hitchcock?
Yeah, definitely that's part of it. And I think the other thing was I did so much cross-hatching and feathering. There's so much shading in that book. I don't think color would really add much to it. So I think it just kind of, it was so stark black and white. It kind of, it just looks good left alone like that. So, but yeah, definitely to kind of give you this idea to make you kind of feel like you're watching an old movie. When you're reading that, even though it's set in the 90s, it feels like something you would have, a movie that would have come out like in the 40s.
To kind of, as on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Dry County, which also takes place in the 90s, albeit the early 90s, which is basically like The Hangover from the 80s. What made you kind of want to revisit that period and kind of see that from a neo-noir lens with Lou Rossi and his adventures in Miami?
Well, the character of Lou Rossi I had come up with as a way to do crime novels that were, heavily based on my own life. And I've kind of, over the years, I've lived in a lot of places, like hopped around the country a lot. And I thought, there's situations that I've gotten involved with in these different places, like, relationship, the same thing, like I was saying before, like relationship troubles, trying to make more money, get by, tons of different jobs, things like that. I thought it'd be interesting to take this character to all these different places and kind of show him as he's growing older. And in each new place that he's in, he kind of gets himself involved in some criminal storyline. So I thought, it'd be great to start. I'll start it at around the time that in 1990, 91 was the first time I really lived on my own away from home. So I thought, it's a good place to start. And it was the first place that I would have had my very first relationship, but things didn't work out. And that's the other thing, that my experiences there kind of, it's, not unusual kind of relationship drama for someone in their 20s, but it just kind of lent itself to the story, the criminal story, where this girl goes missing and he thinks she's been kidnapped. And so, I just thought it'd be a great place to start. And I thought, early 90s would be interesting to kind of show how the 80s still kind of has its stamp on culture.
Yeah. Would you say that Lou, and you had kind of alluded to this earlier, is Lou the most personal, or the most personal protagonist that you've ever created across, your 20 plus years of working in comics?
Definitely. Yeah. So much of it, the other idea too was to do something along the lines of, I don't know if you've ever read the Miami Blues trilogy by Charles Willeford, but those books are, there's a protagonist as a detective, and each book is a different case that he's working on, but it's so the nuts and bolts of what that everyday job is like, and it gets so deeply into this guy's everyday life and his family life, and outside of just the job of being a policeman. It feels these books they're interesting, and they definitely have they're definite, like they're you get the hard-boiled kind of crime scenes that pop up in the story, but the book mostly, like, it just feels like it's barely a crime novel. And I thought that would be interesting to do something that's almost autobiographical, just the same, like a place that I lived, jobs that I've had, all very similar kind of situations, like taking something that's almost an autobiographical story and just kind of weaving just a few crime scenarios into that story to just slightly fictionalize it. So yeah, it's very close to what my life was at the time. Like the jobs that I had, the character is a gag cartoonist for a newspaper in Florida, and that's a job that I had when I was 20 years old, living down there. And it's the life he has, and it's very close to the life that I was living at that time.
Well, like you were saying, the crime stories in general kind of heighten those slice of life elements. Dry County, I mean, it's definitely a crime comic, but it's almost like it's a slice of life story from a crime perspective, if that makes any sense. And I find that very intriguing about this comic.
Yeah, definitely. That's what it's like. There was a girl that I met, and I think we met at, I think we did, yeah, it's so close to actual life. We did meet at a laundromat. And for some reason, we just hit it off really quickly and we were talking for a long time. But it turned out that she already was living with someone, but she wanted to get out of that relationship. So I didn't see her very often. And then there were times where I had to, um, I think at one point I moved back home, and then my parents decided to move to Florida, so we all kind of like moved back. So it was weird. There was a lot of like I would see her just here and there, and then um, I ended up like losing my job. I couldn't afford to like keep living there on my own. I ended up like moving back home when my parents moved back to New Jersey, which is where we were from. So yeah, I just thought like, well, this story kind of lends itself to like this missing girl crime story would be perfect because we really didn't get to see that much of each other. And then all of a sudden it was like I had moved away, and then I think eventually she moved back home where she came. Her original her hometown was in Texas. So I thought, yeah, that story just totally lends itself to that kind of thing where it's like this girl just goes missing before you can even get a relationship started.
Would you go as far to call, the girl in this narrative, Janet, would you go as far to call her a femme fatale, or would you say she might be a bit of an ingenue, but she's not as maybe sinister as a femme fatale?
Yeah, no, there's nothing sinister. I think it's more of a lot of the stories are loosely based on her story, which was, she had this kind of abusive boyfriend, and this other guy kind of like helped her out of that situation, and then they moved to Florida together, and then he wasn't such a great person to live with either. Like he wasn't abusive, but he just wasn't very attentive, didn't really, and so that kind of made like that character and the previous ex-boyfriend character, those are kind of the like evil characters in the book. And yeah, the girl's just this person that even though he doesn't know her really well, he wants to try to find out what happened to her because she just up and disappears.
I will say, and there's a moment you make a pop culture reference that made both Jake and I kind of like drop our digital copies of this book and just go, oh shit. Because if you may recall, we're fans of the Criterion Collection and fans of a particular film that's in the Criterion Collection. I'm, of course, talking about the classic 1987 film RoboCop.
Oh, yeah.
And two questions. First off, why RoboCop? And second off, you had an anecdote about seeing RoboCop in theaters, which unfortunately we didn't get on the recording of the last time you were on. So I was wondering if you could recount that story.
Yeah. I always remember that movie because I think at first I was like, well, what would be on TV in 91 at that point? I'm like, well, this movie was old enough so it would be on TV. And it's something that the character and his friend Rob in the story is based on a couple of good friends of mine, and one especially, Eric, who actually lived in Florida with, and we were both like huge fans of all that stuff like RoboCop and Predator and Total Recall and all those movies. So it's just like that's the perfect movie for them to be watching. But yeah, I did see RoboCop in the theater, and people went crazy. I remember being really shocked by the violence because I was a pretty avid movie watcher. I would go to the theater all the time, all throughout junior high and high school, and I just don't remember a movie being like so crazy violent like that. So it really like threw me off. But yeah, people got so like pulled into the movie by the end when he like shoots that guy out of the window and he's falling. These guys like stood up and were like pumping their fists and like, die, you piece of shit. They're like screaming at the screen. I was like, oh my God. Terminator 2 is like that too, where like there was almost a riot in the theater. I'm not sure why people got so riled up over these movies. But yeah, I remember that distinctly, like how crazy the people in the theater were.
That's the best. I wish that happened more in movies.
Yeah,
people get more amped up.
It's stadium seating, guys. Let's get that stadium experience.
Exactly. Oh man, yeah. Seeing that panel of them watching RoboCop and getting to see you just draw RoboCop, I was like, oh my God, I would love to see like a Rich Tommaso like RoboCop's Day Off book or something.
Yeah, and it's a good thing too because he's kind of like watching this cop. It's a cop movie, so he's watching this thing and he's sort of playing a cop in the story. So
with both both Dry County and Clover Honey, you kind of have these almost prose. More so in it's more straight prose in Clover Honey, whereas with here in Dry County, you've got almost like these narration things, like almost like journal entries. And is that kind of a nod to hard-boiled fiction and pulp fiction from the 40s and 50s?
yeah, definitely. I do like to play with that a little bit, kind of like the way that Brick movie is like every hard-boiled fiction trope you can think of just thrown into the story, except it's all high school kids. I kind of wanted to play with that too. I think the first scene you see Lou outside of his home, where he's in an office and he's got his feet up on the desk. It looks like this private eye shot, but he's actually in this office he's not supposed to be in, and at this newspaper that he works for, and his boss is coming in and she's yelling at him because he's not supposed to use that office because they use it for meetings. There was a lot of that. There's not a lot, but there's some of that stuff where I kind of want to put my own little twist on hard-boiled crime tropes like that.
Well, you definitely like subvert a lot of that, like the office scene, or Lou maybe has a couple. Again, without necessarily going into details of context, he maybe has too much to drink at a certain pivotal point in the story, and so instead, he's maybe not the knight in shining armor he thinks he is. And it's also like between that,
and he's a virgin too. That was the other thing. That was the big thing. I said, this would be, because when I was writing it I was fictionalizing the story of this girl that he barely knew going missing, and him, spending all of his time trying to look for this person. I'm like, well, how did this guy do this? And I'm like, well, he's like around 20 years old, so he's a virgin, so he's like dying to have a girlfriend.
Yeah.
So he's going out of his way to try to find this girl.
Well, there's also the idea that, and you don't just see that in Dry County, but a lot of hard-boiled protagonists are almost like men out of their time. Like Bogey always seemed a little cooler or a little hipper than the rest of the people in Say to Have or Have Not or The Big Sleep.
Yeah, definitely.
What's his name? Elliot Gould in The Long Goodbye is like, he's kind of like the opposite of that. It's like the 70s, but he's like a character straight out of the 50s. And you get the idea, even though it's like bumpin', grindin', early 90s Miami, like Lou's almost like at certain points like, what the hell am I doing in like bright, sunny, neon lit Miami? Like he's kind of, there's that separation there too.
Yeah. And I think again that comes with being like young and naive, and you're looking for somebody, so you do these things like go to dance clubs and stuff just to try anything to meet somebody, and then you get there and you're like, why am I here? I'm not interested in being here at all.
Yeah. It's like the club is almost, you feel like socially obligated to go, but it's like the most uncomfortable
That's
place.
The worst.
Yeah.
It's just screaming to talk to somebody, and
I think you're just trying anything you can, and you're like, terrible. Why am I doing this?
Well, I think all of us, including us on the show, like, I think we just missed that part of our lives where the nightclub was an appealing place.
Yeah, no.
It's like an old man in your early 20s almost. Like, I just want the quiet bar.
I just want to watch Frasier. I just want to go home and watch Frasier.
Yeah, I remember being in a bar in like, I think it was 92, and again, like I was hopping around a lot. So at this point, I was living in Portland, Maine, and I was just in this neighborhood bar, and everyone was getting ready to leave, and I think it was almost like 1 or 2 in the morning, and this guy was like, yeah, we're all going to go to this rave tonight. You want to come? It's just like all night. I'm like, what is that? I don't even know what that is. I was just party like all night long at this place. I'm like, okay, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, that's something wild. Like, yeah, we all had like, our little bar we go to like and hang out. Like it was Cheers, but to invoke Frasier again. But yeah, that whole like
that's the most relatable shit for me in this book.
Oh yeah, when I was reading that, I was like, I feel you, man. I fucking feel you.
This was like pre-AMC TCM days too. Like
and in Florida there wasn't much. There was just not much to do. There was just not much going on down there. my friend and I would just go like out to restaurants and just sketch in our sketchbooks because there was just not that much to do, especially if you weren't. This when we were living there, we weren't 21 yet, so bars were kind of out of the question at that time. But yeah, there's just nothing to do down there.
Jeez, I will say like this between this and Spy Seal. I mean, especially coming off like when I was like going over the review copy for Clover Honey. That's like some of the most raw, like emotional work that you've done to date. And then I kind of like palate cleansed that with Spy Seal and Dry County, which has a lot of surprisingly like comedic moments. And is that just kind of a reflection of like you being more comfortable as a storyteller, or at least because again there are autobiographical elements in Dry County, but it's not a particularly heavy book.
No, it isn't. Yeah, it's different. I think it's a little different that way than Clover Honey because there's this guy who's just trying to like fight for his life and he's running from the mob. It's supposed to be very much a noir kind of piece, but yeah, I tried to keep Dry County a little lighter, and I think that's because I'm keeping it closer to. It is because it's closer to autobiographical fact. So, there wasn't really anything scary about my life then. It was kind of like, oh, I'm living on my own for the first time, and I'm doing cartoons for this newspaper, and I work at this restaurant, and it's the time where I would go into like Miami and visit my friends and party all weekend. It wasn't really there wasn't anything very difficult about my life at that point. So yeah, I think that's probably why it has like a lighter feel to it. Plus, it is supposed to be a little bit more of a comedy than certainly than Clover Honey is.
Would we kind of expect to see that sense of humor as Lou kind of does his does America to quote Beavis and Butthead, or would we kind of see that sense of humor kind of carry on even in the change of setting?
I think if I could I'm hoping to do more books with him. And if I do that, I think, yeah, there will probably be less and less of that. I think everything, no matter how depressing something is or dark a story is, you always need comedy. But I think there will probably be less and less of that as it goes on, because as the story continues, his life is just going to get harder and harder. It's going to be harder and harder for him to strike out as either an artist or a writer, and he's always going to have to take these crappy like blue collar day jobs to get by, and he's going to continue to have relationship problems again and again. And as you get older, everything kind of weighs on you a little more. The idea, I probably shouldn't put this out there, someone will steal it, but the whole idea of these books is to take a character from like who's pretty much innocent in the first novel and really corrupt him over novels to where he goes from playing detective good guy, and then like after so many novels he's actually become more of a criminal. Like he's been corrupted in that way, because I was thinking of that as well. Like we all kind of become corrupted the more we learn about how life really works and how a lot of things don't work out. You have to make compromises that you didn't ever imagine you would have to make when you're young. If you're in high school or college, you kind of have these dreams and you think everything's going to work out amazing. So I thought, again, since it's a crime story, we can corrupt him even more than that, to where he starts doing like criminal activities that you wouldn't have imagined him doing in this first novel. So that's where I would like to go with it if I could do more books with Lou. Sure.
Now, the first volume of Spy Seal, The Court and Steel Phoenix, is out in a beautiful, like oversized, like dossier edition. When can we expect? And over on the Twitter and stuff, I've seen hints, but when can we maybe expect a return of Malcolm and that wonderful world of anthropomorphic espionage animals?
Hopefully by the fall I'll be working on another one. I have Dry County and another project that I can't talk about now, but so I'm working on, which is something I'm not writing, but I have to draw and color it as well. So yeah, hopefully by the fall, I'm looking to get back to some Spy Seal stuff. I do have a story that I've planned out and extensive notes on and everything. But yeah, I haven't been able to actually start writing the story yet.
Well, I'm trying to, aside from the mystery project, how does it kind of feel to rotate between, the love letter to Herge with Spy Seal, to the slice of life autobiography of Dry County, to even like revisiting this remastering of Clover Honey? How is it? I mean, because you've got a lot of you've got a lot of pots on the stove. Is that the right metaphor, or is it?
A lot of irons in the fire.
Sense,
Yeah.
Yeah, this year is going to be really busy. I have like a couple of things that are a little too early to talk about, and then the Clover Honey thing. And I think it is good because my whole career I've always jumped from one book to something completely different. And even though I want to continue to do more Spy Seal, it is nice to just take a break from that and do something totally different. And I think it'll make me a lot fresher when I come back to the Spy Seal material again. I'll probably be more excited than if I just went straight into another one.
What made this the right time to I guess because you had done a remaster a bit earlier of Clover Honey's, but with this one you've got the exclusive deluxe new hardcover and everything. I mean, I said as much in the magazine, but for anyone who doesn't read Image Plus, and shame on you, but how does it feel kind of revisiting that, over 20 years later?
I've always wanted to have a really nice volume of this book, and when I did all this redraw, I redrew like over 20 pages, relettered the entire novel because I didn't like my lettering I thought it was just really messy back in '95. So it's just going to be really nice to see this book printed the way I wanted it to be printed, like just a really nice printing, just to make all that work worth it. And we couldn't have thought of a better time because both of these, the Dry County story and Clover Honey are both set in the 90s, so I think they'll complement each other really well.
Yeah, one kind of like this dark, like you were saying, one guy basically trying to outrun and outhide death, compared with the adventures of Lou trying to get laid, but with some criminal undertones in the sunny streets of though I guess most of the action in Dry County is at night. Like he's out and about sometimes during the day, but I feel like action really in that book comes out at night.
Yeah, there's mostly night scenes, and that's another thing where I feel like when my parents had decided to move to Florida, I thought, oh, it's just going to be a paradise, and it's always kind of a letdown. You think of Florida as a paradise, and then there's just like there's not much to do. There's just it's not as much of a paradise as you think when you're living there, kind of day to day.
You're getting tired.
So I thought that would be great to just show this. We'll do this Miami story, but we'll have it be mostly night scenes.
Yeah, I mean there are like I've got family that lives in Florida too, and you just get entire seasons where it just rains all the fucking time.
Yeah,
it's like, well, I guess I'm just gonna stay in and just kind of let it all happen. So. Rich, you've been on the receiving end of this question 3 times previous, but what are you currently geeking out over?
Oh yeah, let's see. What am I trying to think of? I've been reading a lot of like older comics. I've been going back to the Nexus comics. I haven't read those in years, and been going back to reading those again. And that's been a lot of fun to revisit. I love Steve Rude's artwork. It's so beautiful. So I've been going back and reading those again. And I've been trying to finish Mad Men. I never got to finish that whole series. I made it to I think I finished season 5, and then for some reason we didn't continue off of that. So I'm going back and finally finishing that again. I've started watching... Is it Android Dreams? The Philip K. Dick Amazon show? I watched some of those, and those are pretty good, but not as good as the last Black Mirror season that I just finished. I thought that was really good. Most of those were really good.
I've only seen the USS Callister episode, which was like fucking phenomenal.
Oh yeah, that one's great.
Yeah, as a lifelong Star Trek fan, that was just like, and Kristen Milioti is just good in whatever she does, and so to see that episode was, and Jesse Plemons finally get his comeuppance was one of my favorite TV moments of this past year.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
You had I remember, I think it was the second time you were on. You were taking breaks between Better Call Saul. Did you ever finish season 3?
Oh, I didn't, because we got rid of cable. I haven't been able to watch the new season. I saw all the previous seasons, but I guess the one that's on now, is that season 4 or 3?
They wrapped 3 end of the summer or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I did finish that. Yeah, that had a great that show's amazing. That's like one of my favorite shows, but I can't watch the new ones now because we don't have cable, so I have to wait till Netflix gets them.
Yeah, always get a season pass on like some streaming service too. That's what I usually, because I don't have cable either, but at the same time, when it comes to shows like, like Better Call Saul, I'll drop whatever I'm doing. It's like, fine, I'll shell out $20 for all 10 episodes, and that'll auto update as they air on TV.
Yeah, and I recently discovered High Maintenance. That was another show which is really well written. It's a HBO show about a guy that sells pot.
It's kind of
all these different neighbors and all over New York City. But that's really well done.
So in terms of, I guess, I'm trying to think if there's, I think we covered all the big bases for, so you've got Dry County, Spy Seal out in comic book stores and comic shops everywhere, and you've got Clover Honey coming out on April 11th. Is there, Rich, while we got you on, before we return you to the wilds of Georgia, is there anything else you want to plug?
No, I think that's it. The only thing I want to mention is that I'm going to be in California on the 28th of February at Comics Experience. They're going to do a signing and interview in the store for Spy Seal because they chose it as their graphic novel of the month. So,
cool.
So that's exciting. I'm really happy about that. I'm excited to go out there.
Are you? Con seasons at this point only like 2-3. Expos in 2 weeks, and 3 weeks after that's is Emerald City. Are you any con appearances kind of like starting to line up?
So the only one I planned so far is I'll be at Heroes Con this year in I forget when it is. I think it's the second week of June. But yeah, I'll be at Heroes Con, and that's the only show I've got planned.
Yeah, at this point, within the past couple of years, your output's been, at the risk of getting my nose brown, your output's been kind of extraordinary. You've got the 2 volumes of She-Wolf. You've got Dark Corridor. Got it right that time. You've got the first volume of Spy Seal. You've got Dry County's about to make its debut. You've got the remaster of Clover Honey. You've basically got an entire bookshelf's worth of material out, all within the span of like 3, maybe 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a little over 3 years. I think the 20 years that I was working for small publishers, it just having to juggle other jobs, and it took me so long just to complete something that was 24 pages, and it's just having deadlines and knowing that I don't really have to take in any other work, that I can just concentrate on my comics, is something I've been waiting for so long to do. So I think I'm just taking advantage of like, oh well, it's happening now, and I'm making money so I can do this on a daily basis. So I'm just doing as much as I can.
2018's your year, man. 2018's your year. Well, Rich, thanks again for coming back on the show. And again, that first issue of Dry County out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, March 14th. And that remaster of Clover Honey out in comic book stores out on Wednesday, April 11th. Rich, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Always good getting Rich on. And I'm glad we finally got that RoboCop story on the record.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Because we had been sitting on that shit back since the Spy Seal days. And now we have it on the Dry County days. I was like, where do I go with that? But yeah, thanks again to Rich for coming on. I think we've all seen a film that's blowing up the box office. Like, it's setting records, and rightfully so, because it's damn good. We all saw Black Panther.
Yep.
Oh.
What do you gents think of it?
We all saw it together for the first time together. 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 For the first time. And that's one of those just
for
annoying.
The longest time.
That's one of those just annoying podcast moments. It's just like everyone's like, "Fuck you."
That's our show.
Oh yeah. Whoops. Just the one giant comment just says "fuck you."
That's our show.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. We're not saying that. Of
Half
course.
the comments we get on YouTube.
That's what I'm saying.
On the Beatles episodes, at least.
That's what I'm saying. I loved it. What are we talking about? The Black Panther. I loved it.
You got so distracted
by
your own
shit. I know. We saw it. We all saw it together, and then I remember like we left the theater, and I was like, "That was really good. Like solid movie, really good." And then I saw it for a second time with my sister, and she bought the tickets, and they were like HDX and 3D. I was like, oh, okay, like I Marvel movies in 3D are pretty solid. Like I'm not like, oh god, 3D. I wouldn't go out of my way, but I was like, oh, okay. But like when they fly into Wakanda in 3D, that was pretty cool. And some of the fight scenes. But the second time I saw it, I think I was able to like with most good movies, like focus on things I liked and re-watch some things and see what's going on. And as much as I love the Alamo Drafthouse, there's like it's not a scene, but there were like moments or two that I missed paying for something. You know what I mean? Like looking down at the menu, which is my own fault. And so I just, oh man,
that's what you get for utilizing their services.
I know. I told you. Who did I tell? I don't know. No, we saw it in the big theater in Alamo, which is great. I miss that place. I fucking love going there. But it's always, I like that we don't go there for every movie because it's like a special thing, you know?
I mean, I've referred to it when I'm planning with Chris. I'm like, this is an Alamo level event.
Yeah, and yeah, the second time, I mean, man, like there's like multiple points in the movie that are just like some of my favorite Marvel stuff that's ever been on the Marvel big screen. The performances are out of control. Like we kind of hinted before, on a couple of podcasts before we even saw it, that they had been talking about Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger performance and kind of changing the Marvel villain game. And that certainly does. Now that we've seen it, we can say that all.
He's certainly the most nuanced villain.
Yeah, and it
was glorious.
But he's got like an actual purpose. It's not like he stumbled across something and it made him a bad. Like radioactive glop, and now he's a bad guy. Or something cliche like that. Like it's a real.
Or he's not just a capitalist.
It's just a real fleshed out character. And it was great because, we all talked about how much we love Black Panther and Civil War, and the build up for that and being able to see him and how much, we love Ryan Coogler. And just, it was so good. Just so freaking good. I can't wait to own it and just watch it. Because honestly, like there's a lot of movies now, like even movies that like I really like, they'll like, they come out and I'm like, I don't feel like buying it. Or I'll buy it and I just never watch it, But Black Panther is one of those ones, man. Like I don't know. And it's so overused and we say it all the time and everyone does it. But like the world building of Wakanda in this movie is like legit, like the best world building we've seen.
Yeah, it's.
I might say in a comic book movie ever.
Yeah, it's a place that doesn't exist that like that felt real. Sorry. Sorry that I took you out of your.
Mine's blown.
Yeah, it's a fictional land, but yeah, no, it feels real. Like all the people that were in Wakanda, like feel like like real people. It's not just actors running around on a fake set.
It takes its time.
Yeah. I loved that we spent more time in Wakanda than anywhere else in the movie, even though we do globetrot in the movie.
Sure.
But like you get a real sense for like what Wakanda is, and it's not just here's another Marvel movie taking place in Manhattan. We're experiencing this new world, and yeah, I loved all the gadgets and like ridiculous technology that they had, just because they got vibranium and like huge droves of vibranium. Like they said, they've been like mining it for,
and they haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also too, like another thing you kind of kind of alluded to is like this. I think a great thing about this movie, and it's refreshing for superhero movies, is you don't have it's not beholden to the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to even seen Civil War because it shows you what you need in the beginning or near the beginning. It's and like I said, it's not that's not me dissing others. Like Civil War or even Thor Ragnarok. Having a lot of callbacks elements because that's rewarding as an audience. But it's also rewarding too to just go in and enjoy the movie for its merits and not having to like them throwing in. Oh, by the way, here's Captain America, and you're like, oh, okay, I love Captain America, and it gives you this false like I don't know what the fuck I'm saying, but like you know what I mean. It was nice to just have it on its own.
Very accessible. Any references are we've seen Everett Ross and we've seen Ulysses Claw before.
Sure.
But it's not like, hey, remember this dude from Age of Ultron? Hey, remember this dude from Civil War? They're just like, oh.
Yeah, to them it's like this guy has been on our like fucking list for 30 years, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
for completely reasons completely unrelated to Ultron.
Exactly. It's like they don't even mention like how they lose his arm, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
they mentioned Sokovia, but as far as you know, it's just like, oh, that's something he was just tied into.
Yeah. I mean, granted, we're about to get the granddaddy of them all in terms of,
everything
tying in. Like that's the ultimate present of the 10 years of this, however, we'll see how it turns out, because that's a huge undertaking. That's crazy.
Yeah, so much so they're splitting into two. Yep.
Just repeat everything. That's a Taylor Swiftism right there. You just repeat it. You echo it back. Sometimes you have the echo first, like sounds far away, so you'd be like, split it in two. Split it in two. Like that's a Taylor Swiftism. Getaway Car uses that a lot.
Yeah.
Split it in two.
Split it in two.
Split it in two.
My favorite action sequence in the film. First off, I'm kind of spoilers for Black Panther, so if you haven't seen it in the
even though like everyone's seen it based on the box office returns.
Yeah, and this thing comes out March 7th, so
yeah. We've given you plenty of time.
Yeah.
Spoilers. It's spoilers.
Spoilerland.
Okay, yeah.
The kind of bummed that Ulysses Claw and Killmonger are dead.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like
Killmonger makes sense.
Killmonger's makes sense. Like, I mean, especially his final lines. Like, that's something where it's that'd be a disservice if Black Panther's like, I want to save it. He's like, okay. You know what I mean? Like, but Claw, I was kind of bummed out about because like he gets like shot in the gut, and I'm like, okay, like maybe Killmonger will leave him, and like this is something that will show up, and he just because he's such an important part of the Black Panther mythos in terms of being the villain. But then he definitely like shot in the head. I mean, like the kill shot is there. You know what I mean? Like,
don't they decapitate him? Or am I?
No,
he drags him in a tarp.
Okay,
that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you see him in the tarp. Yeah, but he gets shot a couple times, and then he gets like
because you only see his head when he opens the tarp.
That might be it.
Yeah, but you get the kill shot there. So yeah, it was kind of a bummer, and it's not like it's like at the end of the movie. Like it's really the
still
turn.
A good chunk left.
It's about an act left.
Now that being said, you get plenty of great Andy Serkis.
Yeah. My favorite action sequence is in the entire film is centered around Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
All the Korea Busan stuff.
Oh yeah.
And he has one of my favorite throwaway lines in the entire film as the car chase starts, where he's just like, "Put some music on. This isn't a funeral."
Yeah.
And then it kicks into Vince Staples, and you're just like, okay.
Yes.
But also Letitia Wright as Shuri.
Oh yeah.
Steals the show.
Yeah. Steals the show.
Very much.
Yeah. Fantastic work. Fantastic work. And I'm glad that they're both coming back for not both, but I'm glad she's coming back for Infinity War in a couple months.
Yeah.
Oh, she is?
Yeah. Her, M'Baku, and what's her name from the Dora Milaje? Ayoke.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like how they've it was totally like I didn't put two and two together, but obviously like Marvel and Disney, being the same now that like she's a Disney princess. Like I was like that's fucking cool.
The best.
Yeah. I hope they run with that. They'd be stupid not to.
Yeah.
I
love a badass Disney princess.
Well, the second time seeing it, she was what I was like most excited to see again because like I knew how great she was, after seeing it that first time, and her scenes are just like delightful and fun,
and her Q scene is wonderful.
Oh yeah. Well, one of my favorite moments in the movie is when towards the end and I love, like I said, I love so much the idea and of T'Challa being a king, like struggling in that role. There's a great line of like, it's hard to be a good man and be a king, and so that Aquaman, like, the Throne of Atlantis stuff is so great, dealing with him taking the role of being king, and the return of T'Challa taking over the role in that third act of him literally just walking with his hands out, like, I'm still here, man, like, fight's not over. And then he takes out that one ship with he has the kinetic energy thing, takes out like the shield, like the shield men of like, and he's like boom, and then like in slow-mo picks up the spear and then tosses it into the ship in like that one just slow-mo shot.
One
of my favorite moments. But then also I really loved where like he's getting beaten down by like those same guys, and he's taking all the kinetic energy, and he sees Killmonger about to take out his sister. And there's this great moment where, like, forget being a king, forget all of it. He just sees that his sister's in trouble, and he sonic booms like a badass motherfucker, and then just sprints and spears him into the finale. And that is one of my favorite beats of the entire movie. Yeah. And also, like, Chadwick Boseman, like, his performance is so great because, he has fun, like, in the Q, we call the Q sequence with his sister, but also like playing that, like the weight of being a young king and like daring to change tradition in Wakanda is so great. And the moment, I know why, but like it seems kind of weird, I guess, maybe saying out loud, but especially the second time, because I knew it was coming, the scene in the end where he's in Oakland, it was probably the most in the movie that I got like misty-eyed, is where he's like, this is where our father killed our uncle, and they're tearing it down. And, Suri's like, good. And he's like, no, I bought it. And he's like, and I bought that building and that building. And I was like, that is fucking badass. Because like, that is a guy who is the richest guy in comics. Like,
he has an entire mountain of vibranium.
Is like insanely rich. Like, forget Bruce Wayne, forget Tony Stark, forget Lex Luthor. Like,
they were saying that for that little bit that they stole from the British Museum, they were going to get like billions of dollars. Dude has a mountain of vibranium.
Yeah, and so that is just one of my favorite moments of where he's like using all that money to like create the Wakanda like outreach center. And I feel like so many of those, like, I love when they do this, and I feel like it's kind of been a thing in a lot of origin movies, or like even like origin comics and stuff, is that last line being "Who are you?" They do that. Don't they do that in Wonder Woman too? Where like they're like, "Who are you?" And maybe it's in Justice League, like, "Who are you?" And she looks up and smiles and doesn't say it because they don't need to say it. And I love that that's like the last thing.
Yeah, it's on your movie ticket if you forgot.
But I love it's like the last thing in it where like the kid runs up after seeing the Wakanda ship and he's like, "Who are you?" And it's like the first time where it's like Wakanda is out there, and like what they know. I don't know. Age
of Ultron, Bruce Banner can't even pronounce the name of the country right. He's like,
one of the smartest men in the world. But yeah, I don't know. I love that scene where like he's just like, I bought all of this, like, and it's nothing. Because like this is going to be so much more. It's there's so much there, and like even I don't think even the second viewing really did it justice. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's such a damn good movie, but it's almost not surprising because like Ryan Coogler is outstanding.
Dude's
man.
3 for 3.
It's crazy. Like, he's one of those guys. I'm like, with when I saw Creed, like what he was able to do with like the Rocky franchise, and like this potential of like, oh my god, it's the 7th, in this franchise, and oh my goodness, Rocky.
Nobody was excited about that announcement.
Oh yeah, and it made, outside of the first Rocky, far and away the best Rocky movie, or best dealing with that in that universe.
You could argue the best Rocky.
Yeah,
movie.
you could. Oh, totally. But I'm biased as shit. No, I mean, I just grew up watching that first Rocky. It's tough.
Yeah.
But anyway, what he did with Creed, I was like, I will watch anything that guy does ever. So he's, yeah. And I love that letter he wrote. I don't know if you saw that letter he wrote to like, the fans and everything. It was cool.
He's like, the response that has brought me and my wife to tears. And it's like, you brought half the world to tears.
Yeah. Seriously.
Any final thoughts on Black Panther?
It was very pretty and very fun. I mean, Jake kind of said it all.
Made a few words.
Yeah.
Made of many words.
Yeah. I'm the one that went to film school, and I'm the one that says, yeah, it was fun. It was pretty. It was colorful.
It's not an inaccurate statement.
No.
Everything
I said was true.
So there you have it. Check out Dry County out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, March 14th. Keep an eye out for Clover Honey next month. Pick out, Spy Seal's out on the bookshelves now, and check out Black Panther if you haven't already, or if you're like, us and want to see it a multiple time, check it a multiple time. So thanks again to Rich Tommaso for coming on with that for Pete. This has been another installment of Catching Up. I'm Sam.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jake. Thank you very much.
Good night, Eric Bana.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual Catching Up show every Wednesday. And you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.